Alright, so we're back for another video, but today's activity got scrapped because of the weather, so we're just going to talk right here on my balcony. Because one of you had a question that I want to get to today. This is a two-part question. The first part is, would I be willing, under the current circumstances with coronavirus, be willing to go ahead and expand unemployment benefits? And the second part question was how I feel about universal basic income. So we're going to go with the unemployment benefits first. And I have a two-part answer to that one. Actually, it might be three, but we'll summarize at the end. So the first answer is no, I don't agree with it, expanding unemployment benefits, because of how that is going to come about. Now, it means one of two things. The government doesn't have the money, okay? The government never does have the money. So they get the money through one of two things. Either they print more, which devalues the money that we currently have, causing our current situations to actually become worse. Or two, they borrow the money. Again, making our situation worse. And the reason that that makes our situation worse is, yes, it helps now. But essentially where the government's at and how much money it owes and its spending is the equivalent of you or me getting a 30-day eviction notice if we don't pay up on our mortgage or our rent, and using our credit card to go ahead and pay that. We have no money in our bank account. We're just going to use our credit card to pay off the debt. Now, the credit card has interest on it. So after 30 days, that interest comes due on the credit card. We now are paying more money than we were before. We're in an even worse situation, and quite frankly, we're probably going to be losing the house anyways. So no, I don't agree with unemployment benefits increasing. However, hard fact of reality in this situation is that our government loves to spend. Both the Democrats and the Republicans do. I know the Republicans like to talk about how they don't like to spend money and they're fiscally conservative and all that other stuff. But they're not. They're the same as the Democrats in spending. They just like to spend money on different things than the Democrats. And so facing that hard reality of going into Congress as a libertarian, I would be one of the very few people who would be opposed to additional spending. And so in order to kind of work around that in the best way possible, I think the best answer would be that we're going to have to accept that they're going to want to spend more. And the best thing we could do is just try and make sure that that money goes to the best place possible, which is to the individual American citizens, not to large corporations, not to bailing out higher educational institutions. Just give it to the people. Okay, give the money to the people. Right now we're in a very strange place. We're in a very strange time. Nobody has an answer that will work for all of us because we've never faced anything like this. And quite frankly, also because we're all individuals with different circumstances, and nobody's going to be able to know exactly what you're going through or what I'm going through and what our different needs are. We should get people out of the way in dictating those needs and just start letting people be able to identify their own individual circumstances and be able to make the betterment on their own for themselves and their family. Get the government out of the way. All right. Now, that kind of leads us into the third part of this, which is like, while the money, if we're going to spend, should be going to the people, one of the things that we should be doing is getting the government out of the way. The government has had restrictions that have and regulations that have slowed the free market's response time to coronavirus and being able to adapt, overcome, and improvise. And those restrictions and regulations should be rolled back permanently. Not just because of what's going on now, but because, let's face it, we just saw coronavirus completely cripple our entire global everything. Okay? This could happen again. We don't want it to, but it could. We need to ensure that the free market is able to respond better next time. Because, while we don't want a next time, there very well could be. Now, one other thing the government should do is be looking to protect the right to life in the basic fundamentals that constitute the necessities of life, being food, shelter, water. Stop making it illegal to live off-grid or in the wilderness. Stop making it illegal to collect rainwater. Protect people's rights to be able to use their property to raise livestock and grow food, because we've just seen how vulnerable our supply chain is for food, toilet paper, and everything else. People need to be able to go and find ways that are outside of what we've been doing lately to be able to provide for themselves and their family. demanding that people pay the very people who just put 36 million people out of work in the last 2 months, that we have to pay them money to be able to go hunt and fish to provide food for our family, because Kroger's telling us they've got meat supply shortages because they're closing all their plants right now. Get the government out of the way, protect the people's rights to be able to provide for themselves and their family. Again, we all have individual different circumstances. All of us have different amounts of savings, different amounts of needs, necessities, different amounts of health status for our families and our own individual circumstances. So just get the government out of the way. So to summarize, no, I don't agree with the unemployment benefits expansion, but if we're going to do it, the money should go directly to the people, and that's the only place it should go to. And 3, the government should get out of people's way right now. We're seeing that with this coronavirus that our government has gotten so big that it's actually inhibited us from being able to adapt, overcome, and improvise as individuals to our own daily lives. And we can't afford that. 36 million people unemployed just showed we can't afford that. Which is probably why I'm getting asked about universal basic income, because it seems like a lot of people right now feel that the economic situation would call for universal basic income as a safety net. And while I understand the concerns in our current situation and wanting a bit of a safety net, one of the issues that I have with universal basic income is, one, I don't think it's a good idea at a federal level. I think there's an argument that can be made for it at a state level. And real quick, just to clarify, there is actually some libertarian arguments in support of universal basic income. I don't quite agree with them, especially at the federal level. Like I said, at the state level, I think there's more of an argument for it. But one of the things that we need to think about with universal basic income is, one, who's been pushing it. Now, the big one that really brought universal basic income kind of to the forefront of American politics talking points was Andrew Yang during his presidential campaign. And that was a big focus of his, was universal basic income. And a lot of people liked him because of it, especially the young people. Now, one of the issues I had with Andrew Yang talking about universal basic income was because it seemed very much like he was a twisted little Robin Hood. Because of the fact that he's talking about universal basic income while he completely kind of just tiptoes around the fact that he was pushing to give himself a $3.6 million raise as president. Now, he did talk about it a little bit in anti-corruption, but when you're talking about anti-corruption for an office, the answer is not to give it more money. So I have trouble trusting the intent of somebody who says that they're going to give everybody $1,000 a month so that they can, and trying to essentially, it looked like buying the election at that point, so he could come into office as president and give himself a raise from $400,000 a year to $4 million a year as president. So I have a very big issue with the intentions on that one. Universal basic income, a lot of it comes down to the devil is in the details and how it works. The same thing with Social Security. Social Security in and of itself, not exactly a bad idea. The worst part about Social Security is that it's not voluntary. All right, not being able to opt out of it is one of the worst parts of it. The other bad part of Social Security is the fact that our government doesn't have it earmarked for us anymore. You know, I know a lot of people like to talk about China owns all of our debt, and while that's true for foreign entities that own our debt, actually around 60% of our national debt is owned by Social Security. That means our government, when they make promises during their campaigns through the politicians, those promises that are usually broken, fail, and just a complete disaster are actually funded through your Social Security payments. That's why you haven't been seeing a raise on your Social Security benefits in how many years now? And they're also talking about Social Security going bankrupt in the decade of 2030s. So the issue with Social Security right now isn't so much that there isn't the money to be able to give people more benefits like the retirees or disabled people or anything like that. It's actually because the government doesn't have the money because they want to borrow it to pay for new programs and new agencies that they promised you during their campaign so they can staff it with their family members and give them a paycheck. So I see universal basic income having a very similar effect as Social Security. I think that's why now we're seeing universal basic income becoming such a hot topic, is because our politicians do know that Social Security is on the verge of being bankrupt. It's going to become non-existent here very soon. There is no answer to it because our government owes its debt to Social Security and it can't pay it back. So I think universal basic income is more being looked at as a way to again find funding for their little pet projects and failed promises to us because they're running out of money from Social Security. So, I mean, I have a lot of concerns with universal basic income because of that. Our government has a horrible track record. All right, war on drugs, failed. Climate change, failed. Whether you believe it or not, failed. War on terror, failed. Stability in the Middle East, failed. We have a 100% failure rate right now. Our government can't do its one job that it has of protecting our rights as individuals. It's failed at that job. Giving somebody who completely sucks at everything it touches more responsibility, I don't know, it's just laughable to me. Like I said, I think there's an argument to be made for the state level. I don't see it at the federal level. And I just see it as another point for the politicians to use their corruption to go ahead and the earmarks of universal basic income towards us. They would likely give us something like $1,000 a month while keeping $3,000 a month to go to pet projects and telling us that they can't afford a raise while taxing us like crazy. So, I mean, that's what we've seen with Social Security. I think universal basic income is going to be Social Security on repeat, especially if it's done at the federal level. State level, you might have a chance, but at the federal level, it's just going to be another point of corruption. It's going to be another point for the politicians to make false campaign promises to us that they have no intention of actually following through on, and will just use it as a way to siphon money from the taxpayers towards their family members like they do now with everything else. I know it's a hard reality to face. I've been there before with some really hard financial times. I've been up and down, up and down, up and down so many times that, it's a roller coaster. And I get it. It's really hard when you've been at that point of, scraping quarters out of your car to try and get something to eat that day. I've been there. It's not fun. But thinking that the government is the answer is just a recipe for disaster. I mean, look, we've relied on them for the corona response, and they've failed us. Every single one of them. I think they'll just do the same again with universal basic income. Sad, but I think that's true. Anyways, I know there's probably going to be some follow-up questions, so if you got them, drop them down in the comments below. We could always do a follow-up video to try and clear a little bit of, or to try and get a little bit more in depth into this if need be. However, with that being said, I hope that starts to answer a few of the questions, get some of the ideas going, give you guys an idea a bit about how I feel about some of these topics. Anyways, my name's John Molnar. I'm the Libertarian candidate for Utah's 4th District Representative to United States Congress this year. Don't forget to vote for me. Like, click, subscribe, follow along. If you got the means to donate, you can. I know times are tough. It would help me in the campaign, but, I get it. Times are tough. If you can't, no big deal. As long as you vote for me in November, that's what I'm worried about. We want to make this a better place. So don't forget to vote for me. Tell DC enough.